Hey, guess what? It's time for security this week. This is Carl Franklin, and the only guy with me today is Patrick Hines. Hey, Pat.
Hey, how you doing, Carl?
How's New Hampshire?
It's hot and humid, really, just like it is down where you are. I think
it's terrible. Yesterday was my birthday.
Oh, happy birthday!
And I played with a band out at a club, and you know the whole COVID thing is getting everybody on edge. So I've basically been in a room with 60 people who may or may not have been vaccinated, and nobody was wearing a mask.
No, yeah, it's interesting.
I don't want to make this the COVID show, but
no, we shouldn't make the COVID show. But it's interesting because that's a good segue into a lot of people know about risks in cyber world as well. And it's fatigue. We've talked about this. It came up as, mask or other fatigues that they were worried would hit people.
Right.
Pandemic fatigue, where, you know what, I know I shouldn't do this, but I'm just too tired to worry about it. And that's very, very true with patching and upgrading systems, manana, right. I'll do it later. And that's what gets people in trouble. I mean, the Colonial Pipeline hack, remember we talked about that? Where it turns out it was a compromised set of VPN privileges.
Virtual private network.
Correct. And that allows for, somebody to come in over the internet and do their thing. And it's a private network, but only virtually.
So let me unpack that for a minute.
Sure.
A VPN is as Pat said, a way that you can sort of, he said do your own thing, but what he really means is that when you have a VPN program, like maybe ExpressVPN, that's a popular one, and I use it too. Basically what you do is you pick a geographical location and you say, this is where I want the internet to think I'm located. And so when you send things to the internet, it goes through this location, which anonymizes you, and therefore people can't track you. And they can't track your IP address. It changes your IP address. And from that, your IP address is a number that identifies your network connection on the internet. Well, on network. But if you're on the internet, it identifies that connection, and they can be looked up geographically. Like when you say, if you go to whatismyipaddress.com, it'll tell you what your IP address is, and it'll tell you where your internet service provider connection is. So a VPN hides that.
And that's actually one use for a VPN. So there's actually two primary uses. The one that you just talked about, which is, hey, I don't want the world to know I'm in Derry, New Hampshire. Okay. Cause they might come and get me. Carl, that getting in my house is not the problem. Getting out would be. I have hundreds of pounds of dogs with big sharp fangs.
And guns.
Some of those, some swords. Yeah. Every room has its own collection of various weapons. But I'm not worried about that. So I don't typically web browse with a VPN. I don't do that kind of thing too often, but it's popular. You use a VPN and it puts your traffic out in Norway or in Chicago or someplace like that. And it kind of makes it harder for the bad guys.
Yeah. People use VPNs to sort of allow video content that is only available in a certain region of the world.
That's right. So if I'm in Germany and a service like, I don't know, pick any of the streaming Prime, services, right, isn't Netflix. Available unless I have a U.S. address, I may work a way to get a U.S. address, but then I have to have my IP address, my endpoint, my VPN endpoint be in that address. So that's a common use of it. But the bigger use of it, the initial use for it, is that companies use it quite often to allow someone who's not in the building to work like they're in the building. So you VPN in, it's like being at your desk in the office.
Right.
You're on that network. You're virtually tunneled into that private network. It's an encrypted tunnel, but it's going over the internet.
Wait, I gotta give a tunnel metaphor because that we talk about tunnels all the time with VPNs. But essentially think about this. You're sending a string, like your email address, over the internet, right? Mm-hmm. And your browser is sending that email address. So think of that email address being a packet of data. Mm-hmm. Okay. And packets of data have, just like the mail does, it has a from address and a to address, but they're IP addresses. and it says, I want to deliver this packet to this IP address. And then the internet, all the routers and all the hardware and software that runs on the internet figures out how to get there the most efficiently. And sometimes you might go through 5, 6, 7, 10 routers across different places. Like first you'll go to your ISP. Mm-hmm. Your ISP will say, I'm going to send you over to, this state, that the main trunk, and then the trunk router from there figures out. So you may go through a bunch of hops. What a VPN does is it takes that packet and it wraps it in a new packet. And it says, here's the IP address, whatever it is, but it's a different packet. And the internal packet is the one that you're expecting to be on your local network. Mm-hmm. Right? So it's encrypting. It's encrypting. And so we think of it as tunneling because it's sort of like building a big tunnel and then putting like a hyperloop in that tunnel.
Exactly.
And the hyperloop is the VPN.
Yeah.
Or the tunnel is the VPN. And the hyperloop is what you actually want to send if you were sitting at your desk.
Okay. I mean, the analogy is that the tunnel is the internet and the hyperloop is the VPN connection with its data inside that no one can see into.
Yeah. Okay. That's better.
And it's a virtual private network, but it's not really private because that data, the packets are exposed, but you hope the encryption holds out. Well, the encryption holds out as long as someone doesn't have the password to decrypt it, and the hackers got the password to decrypt it. Actually, it's a little less complicated than that. They just got credentials that allowed them to VPN in. Now, there's something I wanted to discuss with you, and it has to do with what's called a supply chain attack.
Okay.
A lot of people wouldn't consider the attack on JBS or Colonial Pipeline as supply chain attacks, though a lot of people I've talked to have thought about it that way because they're their suppliers, and if they're attacked, it's a denial of service for them.
Right.
But what a real supply chain attack is like what happened with SolarWinds or Kaseya.
Right. We talked about that last week.
Right. Where someone trusts a third-party vendor, and if the hackers can breach the third-party vendor software, well, then you're going to update their package with their software, and you effectively get infected by applying that patch.
Wow.
And I think that as that goes on, I don't know if I mentioned this in our last episode, maybe I did. I think we're going to get to a point where we need a very tighter control over who checks in what code where and when.
Yeah.
Like behavior analysis on code check-in. This is a constantly evolving environment. One of the reasons that you have to stop every episode and explain things is because it's such a wide space, such a knowledge space that even experienced developers and engineers and SQL database administrators, we don't want to take for granted that they know things because that just leads to compounding misunderstandings.
Yeah.
So I think it's a really important factor that we go back to bare basics and try to make everything as understandable while talking about interesting and important issues.
I totally agree. So the issue that we were talking about before I took us down this rabbit hole or this tunnel, is that, the password to a VPN was compromised.
Yeah.
And it was done using the method that you just talked about.
No, I didn't see any attribution of exactly how it was done. If I had to guess, there's a lot of ways that we as hackers would go and try to breach a password. So let's say you're one of my targets and you're not, just full disclosure.
Oh, thanks, man.
What I would do is I would go onto either the dark web or I would, go and use my own breach database. Yeah. And so if you're familiar with our friend Troy Hunt, he's got haveibeenpwned.com.
PWNED.
Yeah. Pwned, like as in Doom and other video game genres. So haveibeenpwned.com, basically what Troy did, which is brilliant, is he started seeing all these breaches about, I guess it was more than 10 years ago, that were available out on the dark web. And he decided to gather them together, throw them in a database, and make it searchable for the victims. So that you could go there, you could put in your email address, and he'd tell you, hey, your email address showed up in the Home Depot and the this and the that and this other breach. Yep. And these are the passwords that the database shows you were using.
Yep.
Hopefully you're not using them anymore. And what we've done is we have our own version of that database. We don't use Have I Been Pwned, but some organizations will use it for their own protection.
He actually has been soliciting, and companies who've been breached have been sharing their data with him because for the same reason, they want everybody to know.
In case he can't find it on the dark web.
Right.
But if you know, there's a lot of seedy places, Pastebin and stuff like that on the web, where if you know how to go and you know where to go, you can find them. And so we have our own version of that, our own database. And there's also softwares available that'll give you access to it, for looking up your own stuff.
Yeah.
So there's billions and billions of sets of account credentials. The same account might be used several times. But what I might find out about you isn't your current password, but a pattern. So let's say you were in a breach of an ISP many years ago, and you were also in a breach of, a department store, and you were also in a breach of one of the big home box stores.
Right.
I might have 3 to 5 passwords that you've used in the past. And if I see that they're all the names of blues guitar legends plus a 4-digit number, my guessing has been focused quite a bit for password guessing. If I see that, 2 breaches 3 years apart, you had virtually the same password, then maybe that's your favorite and I can start there. And so it doesn't have to be an exact match, because a lot of systems won't have protections against password guessing, which they should.
Yeah. And there are, some of the bigger websites like Gmail and Facebook and stuff, they let you know when there's been a login from a new device that they haven't seen before. And, was this you kind of thing? And that hopefully is something that more and more, web properties will do. It's really, really great.
Yeah. There's so many different, we tend to be stuck in time. Most of us, we don't like change. Change is bad. Yeah. I was watching a video about autonomous vehicles, which is definitely a hot button topic. But what I didn't know is that back in the, I guess right around World War II and before, elevators all had operators.
Yep.
And that many people were afraid to get in an elevator without an operator.
Yeah, that's right.
And it took a few years for people to just get used to it. And now if you got in an elevator with an operator, you'd be like, why is he here?
What are you doing? It's like going to the bathroom with an attendant.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm not a fan of that either.
I got to tell you a story about that. So you've been to my old recording studio, right?
Yes.
Yeah, in New London. So I'm not there anymore. I moved across the street into the Guard Theater. But anyway, this is an old building that was built around, 1920 something. Okay. 1918 maybe.
I remember.
And it did have 2 elevators. One that was manual operated, and it had the whole sundial kind of half crescent, thing that was like a throttle or whatever. Yeah. And then the other one was automatic, And so the automatic one was the one that everybody used until it broke. It broke down, and it broke down for a while. And then the superintendent learned how to operate the other one. And I said, "Hey man, can I take a ride up to the 5th floor? I got a whole bunch of stuff here." And he goes, "I don't know, man. It's kind of testy. Might overshoot it. It's very sensitive." And that's called foreshadowing. And I said, "No, come on, it'll be fine." So we take a ride, and he overshoots it, and he goes up about 4 feet above the floor line before he stops. And he said, "Oh man, I can't get it back down." So I took the last trip in that elevator, and it's still stuck at that same place. I had to hop down and grab all my stuff, but
you're lucky it didn't go 8 feet too high.
I know, right?
That would be the last resting place of Carl Franklin.
You're like Carl Franklin. He couldn't walk up the stairs.
I just thought that was an interesting corollary. And, Richard Campbell, a good friend of both of ours, he says that history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. And which I think is an excellent way to say things. And so, we have to, the bottom line is that physical threats in the real world don't evolve nearly as fast as cyber threats. And so we have to change our behaviors. One of the simple things is we have a system that we're putting online soon, and the invitation to go and register to that system can't be click on this link.
Right.
Because we want to train people not to click on links in emails.
Right.
So we're making it a very simple registration where you go to the domain /ad or reg, and we tell them either copy and paste this into a separate browser,
right,
or open a new browser and type this in.
Right.
I once had, I got to tell you this call. I got a voicemail back in the old days. I got a voicemail from Amex. And they said, please call us at this number, because we see some security, some things that are concerning us with your account.
Okay.
And I looked at the number they gave me, and I looked at the back of my card, and it wasn't a number that was on the back of my card.
Yeah. Did you Google Bing the number?
I didn't, because this was 10 years ago.
Oh, okay.
So I looked at the back of my card, and I said, I'm going to call the number on the back of my card and report this. And I called it. And they said, well, we'll transfer you over to security. And lo and behold, they had actually left a voice message. And I'm saying, why would you leave a voice message with a phone number that's not on the back of my card?
Right, right.
You're training people to do the wrong things. Oh, we hadn't thought of that.
Yeah.
And so even
thanks, security guy.
Exactly. So
thanks, genius.
I once told a doctor that half of the doctors are below average, and he got offended. And I'm like, I guess I know which half you're on. I'm like, actually,
that's really funny.
His reaction was,
he said, average.
Well, he said, you can't say that. And I was like, it's math.
It's just math.
It's just math.
If you have an average, you have an above average and a below average. Just like that old Garrison Keillor thing, about Lake Wobegon, where all the women are strong, the men are good looking, and all the children are above average.
That's right. Yeah, I remember that.
All the children are above average.
But, it's phishing is becoming one of the big ways that people get in. It's changed the way we do our testing. Instead of, you left the firewall open. Oh, you left. Yep. Most people have gotten the perimeter safe. It's the people that are unsafe. Just like the driving cars, the autonomous cars. It's not the machinery that fails. It's the people. 90% of accidents are caused by people.
Right. Yeah. Boy. Yeah. So what else is happening? I know that you don't really watch all the popular news about, breaches and things, but stuff that's going on like in the industry. So what's been on your radar lately?
So I keep watching ransomware. There's ransomware is probably the biggest problem that we're seeing right now, because it's just hitting so many people. I think that eventually it'll become illegal to pay a ransomware. That you will not be allowed to pay a ransomware. It will be illegal and aiding and abetting, and you'll be prosecuted for it. We're not there yet.
But I think you and Duane were arguing about that last week, right? That's your thing, is that it's easy to solve, just make it illegal to pay. But what to do in the case of the pipeline, where it's illegal to pay, then they'll just leave your stuff unencrypted.
There were exactly two choices to this. Either you do the illegal to pay, or the U.S. government, hopefully they're listening to me. The U.S. government should go and make a declaration of hardball, which is during the pandemic, and then they can extend it after the pandemic. If anyone ransomwares, attacks, or in any way cyber molests a healthcare organization, somebody's working on the virus, a hospital, we will consider it an act of war. We will come for you, and you will either get a drone or a tomahawk on your head, and we don't care where you are.
Yeah, well, that could be the same for a utility. Amen.
Do the same thing. And you basically say, we're going to find you. And when we do, we're not going to arrest you. It's an act of war. We're going to kill you. Yeah. And I'm sure a lot of people won't like me saying that. But if you did that, it will raise the stakes. Because
right now, Joe Stalin.
Well, right now. So here's the thing. Do you believe, almost everyone I talk to believes that there is a state of cyber warfare that is going on, and the only people being victimized are Western commercial interests.
Yeah.
The U.S. government, when they get attacked, they're trying to sneak into the network. They're not destroying systems. They're not killing soldiers, and thank God for that.
Yeah.
But they are destroying wealth in the Western world. and we're not reciprocating. I'm not saying we should reciprocate. I'm saying we should acknowledge the fact that the cyber war has begun. It is being waged.
It's in full swing.
I don't believe that any cyber team capable in China, Russia, North Korea, or Iran is sitting on their hands wondering what they're going to do, waiting for a war to kick off. They're attacking, they're ransoming, they're destroying, and we're sitting here saying, well, I wonder when the cyber war is going to start.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that's a doom and gloom attitude, but I get this from everyone. I went down to Florida to drop my mother off to visit with some of her friends. She's got a group of friends who are all 89, all born in 1932.
Wow.
And they both asked me, like, what's going on? Why is this, what are we supposed to do about this? And the only answer I can ever come up with is we're in this weird state of warfare where everyone pretends this is normal and that this is just the cost of doing business. But there's never been a time when there was this much threat to commercial interests.
Well, forget about commercial interests. What do you do if your home computer is held ransom or your small business computer? The government's not going to threaten them with Tomahawk missiles over your hard drive.
Well, they're not doing it for the pipeline. Why would they do it for you? You were on our own.
Yeah.
You're absolutely on your own. And the good news is that they're not. We're small fish. Our home networks are collateral damage. If your home network gets ransomware, the odds are you're just damaged. You might as well have just lost the network. It's hard to recover in those cases.
Yeah, that if paying a ransom was illegal, that wouldn't work for you, would it?
I think I wouldn't. I won't pay a ransom.
Well, you'd rather lose all your data and start over.
Yeah, because all I do is invite them, and I like vendetta. I will find you. Maybe I'm being wishful.
Yeah.
But there's also a lot of examples of people who've paid ransoms and gotten nothing.
You're right. Yeah. Now, have you guys as a company been solicited by clients who have had ransomware attacks, and your job is not just to undo the ransomware, but is to find the attacker? So
you always want to do you have to do some analysis to figure out how they got in. How they got in will usually start with what did they use to attack.
Right. And usually people will know because, Betty clicked on this link in her email and that started the whole thing. Yeah.
So it turns out that if you know what kind of ransomware, it narrows the list of who probably did it.
Okay.
So there's a signature there if you're willing to actually pay attention to that. So we've done some attribution. We've tried to figure things out, but there's always the chance of false flag. And this is where people get a very cogent argument against my cruise missile and drone analogy, which is, well, what if this country frames this other country with the attack?
Right.
Okay. Well, that's possible in the real world too. It's possible with kinetics. It's maybe you got to be real sure before you pull the trigger. But if I wouldn't cry over a known ransomware gang being attacked when they didn't commit this attack.
Yeah.
But they committed a different attack. The bad news is we got our hands tied behind our back because we're trying to be the good guys. We are the good guys. Yeah. But eventually, when everyone else is cheating, you have to decide, like, should we become more Machiavellian when it comes to fighting back? I think you know where I stand on that.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. So bottom line for you and your business is, if you get a ransomware attack, would you call Pat and Duane?
It's better to call before. Much, much better.
Yeah.
The problem with a ransomware attack is we're not the kind of company that's going to come in and like restore your backups and do that stuff. We're more.
Hopefully you have IT people for that.
Yeah. And there's companies that specialize in coming and restoring all your desktops. One of the things I recommend people look into is things like desktop as a service. One of the things that remember we talked about shutting your phone off.
Right.
Well, what does that do? That means that if the hacker gets in, it flushes them back out very often.
Yeah.
So, maybe it took them 3 weeks to get on your phone, but if you restart your phone every week, they got to start all over again. difficult.
So desktop as a service, meaning you create a virtual machine at a cloud provider, Amazon or Azure or even Google, I think, has them. And you create a Windows machine to your spec, and you basically go and log in and use it. And when you're not using it, you turn it off. Yeah. And there are problems with that for a guy like me who has a lot of audio and video devices connected, and has to do real time kind of recording and video recording and stuff. So I wouldn't be able to use that for most of the things that I do, but I would for business. And that may be the real issue, right?
So Liquid Labs, Citrix, Star2Star, Azure, there's a ton of desktop as a service solutions. Most of them will redirect your local documents to the cloud.
Yeah.
So if you save something to your desktop, it's saved to a cloud storage.
Yep.
And if your VM gets recycled, it's still on your desktop because they sync it down. It's usually a question of bandwidth.
So here's a good solution, guys. Listen up. Don't ever open email in a browser on your desktop machine. Use a virtual machine for all your email, everything. And do is what Pat was saying, where they have, you can save things in your VM that will go directly to your desktop. You can use Dropbox for that, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
And the benefit of that is because email is where the threat vector is, right?
It's a big part of it.
It's a big part of it. Yeah. So it's the biggest one, I would say, for ransomware.
So you remember back in the day, I mean, you and I were very tightly bound to Microsoft as they came up in the world. And
That's right.
You and I have kind of floated our own ways now, but we know a lot about how they developed over the last 20 years.
Yep.
I remember back a long time ago when I learned that Microsoft had a policy that you were not allowed to save any file to the local system, because if your system stopped operating, it was only about 3 hours of triage before they came around and just replaced it. And they weren't going to go and recover any files off of it. They were just going to go and that machine was gone. You're never going to see it again.
Now, let's clarify what you mean by save a file to the local system.
Okay. So, if I'm working in a work environment and I have a proposal that it has to go out to Acme Corp, I'm selling to Wile E. Coyote.
On your desktop machine.
Huh?
Desktop machine, yeah. Okay.
Or even a laptop. And I work on the document and I save a draft of it before I go home for the day. I have a couple of choices. I can save that draft to a cloud share, to a file server share that's backed up somewhere. I can save it to a number of places, but one of the places I can save it to is my local machine, a local location that isn't synced anywhere.
Right.
If that machine dies overnight, power surge, flood, just random act of God, rotten bits, whatever, that file's lost. There's no opportunity to back it up. Most organizations will not back up client desktop machines.
Yeah.
Because it's just too much. There's too much redundancy there.
Right.
So that data is lost and you've wasted company assets because you should have foreseen that there was a potential to be lost. It's just lazy.
Yeah.
So there's a prohibition typically in most companies that you don't save things to places that aren't managed by the network team to be backed up.
Oh, sure. I was under the impression what you were saying was Microsoft didn't allow you to. So what you're saying is your local company pretty much wouldn't allow you to save things locally. They want you to put it in
They would discourage it. And I'm talking about the fact that Microsoft had a policy that it wasn't something you should do.
Now, Microsoft, it was that as an employee of Microsoft?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Not a user of Windows.
No. And I should have been more clear about that.
No, I get it.
But that's what you're here for.
Yeah.
You keep me
I'm the
honest.
clarifier. I'm like the ghee maker.
I'm going to call you Visine.
I'll take butter and I'll make ghee. I clarify it. And my daughter's name is Claire, one of them. And so, when she explains something, we say, "Oh, thanks for clarifying."
There you go. Clarify.
It's an old joke.
So one of the pieces of advice I would give people is you got to do backups. If you care about the data, you need to back it up.
Yeah.
Okay. You can trust someone else to back it up by using something like OneDrive, et cetera. But now if they screw it up, you really don't have any recourse. So you should back up your data to some external USB drive device.
Right.
So here's what I'd recommend. If you have a relative that lives nearby or that you see regularly, get one of these 8 terabyte plug-in USB drives.
Heck, 10 terabyte. They're like $300 now.
Right. And just get all your stuff, get a script, get a software program, however you want to do it, and back it all up on a periodic basis.
Yeah, weekly, probably.
Weekly is a good plan.
Yeah, it's a good plan.
And then disconnect it when you're not backing up.
Yep.
And every time you see that other family member, swap drives.
Yep.
You got to trust them. That means nothing racy on those drives.
Yeah, that could be the problem right there.
You
it's
can
Cousin
encrypt them.
Gus.
You can encrypt them.
Cousin Gus is selling my
that's right.
my private photos.
But you
as
need
stock footage.
but you want a few things when you do a backup. You want it to be offline so that if you get ransomware, it doesn't get encrypted, it doesn't get infected. That's also a danger. If you only have one offline backup and you run the backup between when you got infected and when the virus erupted, some of these things like Emotet I saw recently was going to sleep for 666 hours. You know, the devil's number of hours. And that's almost a month. That's about a month. Wow. So, you might need more backups. So you got to, it depends on how paranoid you want to be.
And taking them to your cousin Gus's house protects you in case your house burns down.
Fire, flood, things like that.
So maybe you need to have a couple of these and,
one to the office, one goes in,
every month,
one goes to your mother's house,
and one a month and one every week. And
I mean, but that's work.
It is.
And
that's too much work.
People don't like work.
I don't want to wear a mask.
Okay. Wow. It just got political.
No,
I don't know how that's political, but
sorry.
It did.
This is not the COVID security show.
That's right. So, but it really is about how much effort you put in. Security is like reliability. There is no car will work 100% of the time, no matter what you do. You can't guarantee 100% for any machine or any process.
I just thought about the listenership of this podcast.
Yeah.
And how we might have offended some anti-vaxxers right there.
Yeah.
And then I thought about, what is an anti-vaxxer worried about security for?
That's true.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe I just made them all mad. I'm sorry.
It's all right. It's not a very politically correct show. I was talking about bombing people.
Yeah, right.
I probably already offended the anti-killing people, which is a lot. You know what, Carl? You and I have been podcasting for a long time together.
We have.
With the first .NET Rocks, I was your guest.
That's right. Almost like 20 years ago.
I know.
Yeah.
But, and we offended a lot of people along the way.
That's true. We have. So anyway, that's not what we're here for. We're here to
we're talking about security.
Help you with security.
So the backup thing is one of those things you got to confront. Figure out what your backup strategy is.
Yeah.
And it's like, quitting smoking or losing weight. You got to keep getting on that horse. If you fall down, just keep trying to do it again. Because if you do get ransomware, it's liably your only shot.
Right.
Now, there are some ransomwares that after a period of time, they get broken and the keys become available online.
Interesting.
Don't click on emails that promise you that, though.
Oh, right. Yeah. The thing with malware used to be, and I don't know if it is so much anymore, but you go to some nefarious site and, or you used to be able to do this, and all of a sudden these pop-ups would come up, and since pop-up blockers, everything has gotten a lot better, but pop-ups would come up and say, your computer is infected. Click here to disinfect it. And by clicking on the disinfect, you're actually going to infect your computer because, hey, you've already resigned to the fact that you're infected. So you're infected, right? Even though you're not.
You bought into the lie.
You bought into the lie. And then when you say disinfect, you're actually going to get infected.
Have you heard of self-kidnapping? Did I talk about that in the show before?
No, but if I can make some money at it, tell me how I can kidnap myself.
Unfortunately, by telling people how to avoid it, I'm going to have to tell people how to do it. Okay. So let's say that you're at a resort in, a foreign country. Or even in the United States.
All right. I'd like to go to Mallorca.
It could be in the United States.
Oh, all right.
And the person who wants to affect the ransom doesn't want to get their hands dirty. They don't want to actually put their hands on you. They don't want to take any chances that you'll see them. So what they do is they get your information about you and your wife.
Okay.
And they wait until you go out and do something. So you're going to go down the store and grab a pack of cigarettes or whatever you're going to do.
Okay.
And what they do is they have to have your phone number and they'll call you and they'll say, we have your wife.
Oh.
And if you ever want to see her again, you need to go here to this hotel that we tell you to go to.
Okay.
And so, okay, you're like, wow, that's scary. So I'm going to go to that hotel.
Yeah.
And we're going to tell you, along the way, we're going to have you stop at a place in the public and we're going to have you put your cell phone in the trash can there and pick up a cell phone that's taped underneath a bench.
Okay.
And now you have a cell phone and you don't have your cell phone.
Jeez.
And you're and they'll call you on that cell phone and say, go to room 506 at the Fleabag's Estates.
They're kidnapping you.
They're kidnapping you. Yeah. And they're kidnapping you.
And you're
not
doing
your wife.
It. Yeah,
you're doing it. And so now they go pick up your phone and they call your wife.
Oh, jeez.
And they say, we've kidnapped your husband.
Oh, man.
And they get you both to work they try to get you to give up bank account number so they can take the ransom.
Now, the first thing I would do if somebody called me and said, we have your wife and we want you to do all these things, I'd say, great, hang on one second. And I'd call them.
Nope. And they'd say in the thing, if you hang up or we lose this connection, we're just going to kill her.
Ah, okay.
So, I mean,
have a second cell phone.
A lot of times they'll say they're watching you. And a lot of times they will wait until they can see you to call you.
Oh, okay.
Because they want to know if you're going to carry it on or if you're going to go call the police, and then they'll just abort. But again, they're playing to people's fears. I think in that case, if it happens, you have to take the chance of hanging up, heading back to the hotel, and checking to see if your family is there. Because,
I agree. I mean, threatening to kill somebody is words, but actually doing it means that you're committing a crime and you're going to pay for it. So,
well, I mean, they're committing a crime because of the extortion.
Well, I know, but murder is a hell of a crime.
It is, but it's all hollow threats. It's all vague. It's all just fake.
Right.
The real goal of this is for them to get you to kidnap yourself. And this actually was going on for a while. Huh. I don't know how prevalent it is anymore. It fell out of the news, but it's an example of people you take advantage of. It's a social manipulation. It's a
social engineering.
It's a social engineer.
Yeah. As we know, that is probably, I don't know how prevalent that is in terms of the percent of hacks that happen, but a lot of them are socially engineered.
Yeah.
They're getting you to do something that you believe you're doing X and you're doing Y. And most of the time when you're doing Y, you're really screwing yourself.
Back in the old days, I mean, literally early 90s, when I was working for Cigna, people would call the switchboard. Yeah. And they'd say, hey, this is Bill over at corporate. We're having a problem with the phone networks in your area. You're using this model of system for your switchboard, right? Yeah. And they got the model right. So you're like, yeah. So, is this the model? You got the model where it's got the red key in the bottom corner? Yeah. Okay. We just want to do a test. Can you just hit #0? Yeah. And let me test to see whether it should just direct me back to our system loop and you'll lose me as a call. Okay. Okay. Yeah, no problem. Boom, boom, boom. And then you lose them and you don't think about it. What that was a prisoner in the U.S. prison system who knew that you had that phone system because someone told them, and you just gave them an outside line they can dial anywhere in the world and it's going to go on your phone bill.
Well, back when we had long distance phone bills.
And some of them were keeping the phone lines on for days. Wow. Because they would just pass it to another prisoner. Wow. And they were making all these phone calls. Now, that's a theft.
Sure.
And Captain Crunch, the original phone freak.
Yeah.
With his little,
he found whistle,
a pipe,
2600
a whistle
hertz.
And Captain Crunch. Yep. Yeah. So that's a social engineer. That was a social engineer. Sure. So it's been going on for a long time. It'll go on for a long time.
Yeah. I generally don't respond to texts that come from important sounding things like, the IRS or your bank or, All of those things. If you're not expecting it, yeah.
Yeah, if I'm not expecting it, I don't pay attention to it. And if I am, if I do pique my curiosity, I go back to the source through a separate medium.
Yep.
I'll go with an open browser and I'll find out a phone number and I'll call them myself. But you got to be careful about Googling numbers. So I know of instances of people Googling Intuit for QuickBooks, and the top result is a Intuit support number.
Yeah.
And it's hackers. They're trying to get you to, they'll give you support up to the point where they take over all your money.
Well, and therefore you have to look at the URL that you're getting it from.
Yeah, you have to go to the official site and then find the contact.
Yeah.
But some companies make it hard to find that.
Oh man. It's a cruel world.
It is.
Well, Pat, I think this is a good place to leave it for now, but I guess Duane will be back next week, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Awesome.
All right.
Hey, thanks for hanging out. And Pat, we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Carl. See you soon.
We'll see you next time on Security This Week. We're out of here.